Hey everyone, this is Margaret with On the Mend. I am so sorry I'm an hour late. But I'm excited because I'm an hour late. So I took a vacation. I need to take a mini something. So that really made me happy to be able to get out of town and go chill in a hotel room. So that's kind of what vacations look like nowadays. They really don't look like um, anything but like that. So you really don't get to go and do stuff. But I actually got to go like stand and get water and kind of connect with some things. And I had to do that in order to really like move and be able to move through this next series of On the Mend. And actually kind of redirect On the Mend. I told you we were doing some stuff On the Mend. We had a lot of loss. And so my Pastors Aid Committee, I promise they're going to come back, but they are all healing up, still praying for those who are grieving, not just on my committee that I made up, but also for individuals who have just been grieving in this season, and also want to honor and lift up Dr. Barbara King's family, all of her spiritual sons and daughters. Of course, we had someone who is one of the Pastor Aid Committee individuals. We want to absolutely support Dr. Brian Jones, and as they move through with that transition, the beauty, if you've never met Dr. Barbara King, and I think it's good that I even mentioned her tonight, it's just the belief of transition. And how you can heal even in the midst of transition, and you move through in the thought of though the body itself is no longer present, no longer tangible, that this person has moved into transition of witness. And for all my Bible people, you can find that in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. And so it isn't too off. And Dr. King, of course, was brilliant theologian, scholar, and of course, I always honor her. Great social worker. I've been following her work for most of my career, and I'm honored to even be able to mention her tonight. So tonight, I told you guys we'd be talking about childhood issues and adult and adult relationships. But I think I put up the title tonight. I think I changed it up a little bit, but that's what we're talking about, because we have a lot of stuff going on with adults that we don't manage, and it comes a lot from childhood issue. So of course, what we do On the Mend, and how we manage On the Mend is we look at it from a biblical perspective. And tonight, I kind of want to bring up some perspectives in regards to talking about 4 vital protections are the 4 critical C's. So this is something that I learned. I want to thank God for Terry Cotman. If y'all have never read or studied her work, please go look up Adlerian Play Therapy. She is the business, and I love that woman. And so she introduced me to this. And so for her work, you have to read some stuff. And this actually just intrigued me and took my mind over, because I really believe that this stuff, like not understanding how we behave or not understanding the things that are innate, because that's what we seem to think in Black community, like you just supposed to do that. But these things are actually things that are learned, introduced, and groomed and taken care of in our childhood, from infancy into adolescence, that carry us over into our adulthood, into healthy spaces. So tonight, the book I'm using is A Parent's Guide to Understanding and Motivating Children. I know some of you guys are like, what? But this is by Amy Lou and Betty Lou Bettner. And so very simple read if you guys are interested in it. Because y'all like, why does this have to do anything with adults? Well, a lot to do with adults, a lot, and how we're going to talk about it and what it looks like. So we started out this discussion. Pastor Zay and I have really been sitting in, I want to say 2 Samuel, and we're talking about David and his kids, and we're talking about this misbehavior space. So I'm not going to do that, because that's what we're going to pick up on Wednesday. But tonight, I really want to not just talk about, I want to talk about David actually, and talk about how we kind of look like this bring up moment. So just to put it out there, like this one, I really had to sit down with it, because being transparent, I did this a lot for my own healing, and for members of my family to heal. And so in this transparency, I have the parents that I have, and I thank God for them. On the other hand, there were some spaces now that I'm sitting in this seat that I can see that maybe could have been taken care of better. And as adults, this isn't a blame or anything. As adults, we have a responsibility for ourselves to gain access to our emotional wellness by visiting these places or these protections that are foundational. And so they are foundational in how kids are raised, and how they meet challenges in difficult times. And so these are difficult times. And some of us are having these adult responses, even in our relationships, whether it is work, we're having adult responses in life, period, in our home life. For my pastors, I have watched, and I appreciate you guys, because you're having it even in you sit in the seat of pastoring. And for Black church, we see pastor as kind of like parent. For some Black churches, we see pastor as like this access to God. But guess what? I want to say, God acted out too. We don't like talking about, God acting out, but God had emotions. That's what I mean by acting out. God is jealous. God was angry. God, it's all of that. And so those who sit in that seat, well, we are called to walk in spaces of leadership like that. It's really difficult in these difficult times. So we recently had an election, and the election is still a buzz. And nobody, the election is still a buzz, you guys. Like, it's still a buzz. Like, I think it's crazy that it's still a buzz. But why is that? Because we're watching the current leader of this nation not being able to operate in these protections or these critical C's in these difficult times, and not being able to manage them. And so what happens if we have access to these critical C's in a healthy way? What this looks like in our childhood issue relating to our adultness is this. And so because we have to look at what happens in the difficult times and what becomes. And so the becoming part is how responsible we become, how productive we are, how cooperative we are, our self-reliance, our resiliency. We do a lot with kids. So I primarily work with adults in my practice, but I do have some children. And what I've heard throughout Black community, and being on the men, is that children are resilient. And so children they really are. I'm going to talk about it tonight. Really resilient, like they can bounce back. But what does the bounce back look like when we don't effectively move through those stages of development? Like I said, I'm going to talk about David tonight. David, literally in his stages of development, we see it in the text. Like Jesse literally said, the one that's outside, like if y'all got a Message Bible, go read. It's real plain there. Like he lines up all of his children when the prophet comes. And it's like, he says, do you have another child? He was like, mm-mm. Then he goes back and says, you're talking about the one that's outside. So that really says something, because what did David's resiliency look like? And it has some deficiencies, because David started to self-soothe and self-comfort in ways that were inappropriate. David had anger outbursts. I mean, read the text. David, he had like high sex drive. I mean, it was a lot going on with David. We don't like to talk about it. So that goes to that resourceful place. Do we resource? Do we find things in a healthy manner? Are we contributing back? Like, are we giving back if we have healthy spaces? And are we happy? And so sometimes people are like, well, it's not happiness, it's joy. But truthfully, are we happy? Like, are you happy in everything that's going on? So, and tonight, you guys like it, love it, share if it's helping you. Y'all can chat, y'all can come in, I can see the comments. And so I will answer questions or whatever you need as we go. So I want to move through, and I will put them up. So there are 4 vital protections according to Drs. Liu and Drs. Bettner. And I actually believe these. And this is why this was so intriguing as I moved through learning Adlerian play therapy. And it really is something that has helped me, because not only does it come up to know, like, we need these 4 protections, but what does it look like when we don't actually get them? And what now becomes of the goals of our behavior. So what are we doing to actually be seen, heard, and connect with? And for some of us, we even have a poor connection palette. That's what I'll say, because we didn't grow up being connected, like isolated or not done, and I'm doing this a lot. Black community didn't get a lot of this stuff. I haven't received it in the community I'm from. Well, we get to talk about this, and it's something that can really help us. Because, we don't get a chance to talk about it, and we don't get a chance to be honest about it. And so tonight, as we talk, I want to go through these four, and then I also want to talk about what does it look like in our behavior when they're not quite there. And so the first one is connection. Like, we all have to find ways to connect. So I pick at the David part because I've done a lot of study on David. And so we find that when David comes up, the first thing is, I don't know how connected David was really to his family. And we watch that movement. And even as we move through David's life, even when David is sitting facing the loss of his own life earlier, before he is announced as the king officially, he even has this heart to come back and say, hey, this is my mother and my father. Can you watch them while I'm out fighting? But I don't know how connected he was to them. And this is the importance of connection. And remember, you learn these four protections in your infancy, in your childhood, and in your adolescence. And what happens in connection? So connection looks and sounds like this. And so if we are connecting to the world, then what we will have is we should have access to strategies for living. It should be able to set behaviors to carry out those strategies. We will have positive feelings about being connected. So we will be cool with being connected. Like, it'll be great. We will understand how to find and develop mutual support. And we'll be healthy in our intimate relationships because of this. We'll have intimate relationships that are healthy with our friends, with our loved ones, and with those that we share romantic relationships with. So we'll also sit in spaces where we'll cooperate. Cooperation does not mean being ordered around, but like, I can hear you and I can see what I need. So what goes on with that? And how do we get there? But if we can't, then what we find is those who feel insecure. How many of you guys are sitting in that? Because again, this is on the men, and I want to take our time with that. You start to isolate those when we see that. And this is also in connection. I want us to think about that even if you see this in your own children now, because in difficult times like these, have we connected well prior to the difficult times? Difficult times. Hey, we just watched our president not really be happy with the election outcome. So in 2020, we have experienced, I don't even know how to define how much loss, because we've lost over 200,000 people to a virus, and we're losing numbers every day with the recent spike. This is why this is important. So how are we connecting? Like, how many of you guys are connecting live, like going to someone's house for Thanksgiving, even with the recent spike? I don't know. But then what happens when I go and I don't know if my family members have been tested? Like, I have a really dear friend. She was scared. Like, she was like, no, because she has respiratory issues and heart issues. And she was like, no, I wasn't. So I'm very careful about where I go. And so not going to have a big birthday party, not going to have big fun, because I can't, because I have to be worried about my health. So what does it look like when it comes down to connection and staying connected and being connected? And if we don't know how to do this, because you learn this in childhood, then insecurity, isolation, pay attention to your kids now, because are they being peer pressured? And then you start to seek out attention. Sometimes if you do not go through this, you seek out attention in a negative way. And you guys, that's bad. Pay attention to what that negative way looks like. And how are we connecting? If we've developed this and moved through it appropriately in this protection, we know in a way to protect and how we have good boundary is that we feel secure about our boundary. I have a really good friend, like absolutely secure about her boundary. She's like, no, people cannot come over to my home because COVID had a spike. If you left something over here, I will leave it on the front porch. That sounds so rude and so nasty, but it is not, because she's literally telling us, I love you guys. I'll talk to you on the phone. But at this time, I'm not going to allow people to come into my home because I'm caring about those that's in my home. So she's secure in her understanding of how to connect. She can reach out, like, we all should be able to do that. But you have some people who haven't developed well in sitting in spaces of connection. They don't reach out. They isolate, remember? So you might have someone who is isolated so much so that you're looking for them because they don't really know how to connect. And then they know how to make friends. So I am not one that makes friends easy. All of my friends will tell you, like, Yeah, no, she didn't. But I know all of this has something to do with my childhood and how I connected. Again, to work on this requires me to, I had to be really transparent. And so I'm an only child, and I grew up in an abusive household, and it was very strict. And when I say abusive, it was physical abuse involved as well, but it was very strict. And most Black children from the 80s probably heard this statement: what happens at home stays at home. So my ability to connect about my pain, I couldn't, because I couldn't say, hey, this is what happened to me today, and I don't know why it happened. I had to hold that in. So now in adult relationships, I seriously have to think about, is this a safe space for me to tell my business? And if it's not, and I mean, this could be my own adult pain, then I withdraw. And so what happens is I have to work through that. And as a clinician, I literally have had to work through that over the times of me being a social worker, because I had anxiety about being a social worker, because I realized once I got my bachelor's degree in sociology and anthropology, I'm going to be a part of a group of people where you have to talk, you have to engage, you have to be present. And in some spaces, you have to be able to manage transparency so that you can manage disclosure. Like, how much of me do I really need to give out right now so that I can build rapport with my client? I mean, I was full of anxiety. I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this job. Why did I get a degree in this? I should have been a librarian. I don't know. But because I could be quiet and read books. But at the end of the day, I'm so glad that I'm a social worker, and it's allowed me to work through the ability to connect. And then in that, it also allows me to cooperate. Like, how do I cooperate with my environment? This is coming back to the Maslow piece that I always talk about. Like, are my base needs met? And if that's the case, what is my safety looking like? What is it? How am I holding my safety? How am I sitting in healthy, safe space? Healthy, safe space looks like this. Like, am I physically safe? Am I emotionally safe? Am I socially safe? And am I spiritually safe? So going back to David probably, back then I used my imagination. David probably had to sit in those spaces. Am I physically safe? I mean, he's looking at a giant trying to kill him with a rock. So am I physically safe? Hey, Cuzzo. So yeah, am I physically safe? And then David probably had to sit back and say, emotionally, man, my emotions are going crazy. Like, I'm literally this kid standing in front of this giant, and I have to believe that the slingshot is going to take him out, because if it doesn't. So, this is how he's doing it. Because David, in just watching David's life, didn't look like he connected well. Didn't. We pay attention to his insecurities. Pay attention to how David isolated himself sometimes, and how he literally led into some peer pressure. Like, if I can act like I'm crazy a little bit, then maybe the king won't try to hurt me. I mean, things like that. All right, attention seeking. Like, when he became king, David did a lot of attention seeking. And this passed on to his kids, by the way. So this is why I'm really big about talking about this in these difficult times. And then sometimes David did not cooperate. He knew what David was supposed to be doing, which led to a lot of decisions to be made later on when he became king. So how are we looking with this? Where's our connection? And is that connection leading back to our areas of being responsible and productive, self-reliant, resilient? Do we know how to resource? Do we know how to get stuff in a healthy manner? Because again, all of these things can have like a negative connotation too, that I'm saying. And are we contributing back out of our connection with people? And are we happy? Like, are you happy with your connections? So do I feel like I belong in this place? After I manage that safety, I'm sitting in the hierarchy of belonging. Like, do I belong here? Am I well connected? So this again plays into these childhood issues in these childhood spaces. They play a big part, a huge part in how our adult relationships play out in all areas. I know someone, when I say this person, it's just really difficult for them to keep a job, but this person also had to sit back and say, how well do I connect? And when the person realized that they don't connect well in large, huge environments, like working at a retail store that is busy and big, they realized they kept losing that job. So what happened was, I said, and I'm not this person's therapist, it's a friend of mine. And I said, well, why don't you try something smaller? Like, and they were like, never thought about that. So went to a smaller, loved retail, loved design, loved doing all of that. What happens? They went to something like a boutique. He's been able to keep that job, manage that job, be a buyer for the people, but could not do an H&M. H&M was scary. It was, I don't connect well. Like, love customer service, love fashion, love design, hate connecting though. It's too much. You ask me too many questions. Like, what's on the rack? I don't know. Look on the rack. Not the appropriate answer when you're working in retail. So, but doing a boutique and only seeing 25 people doing the shift was much easier than a bum rush of 100 people asking you about the same shirt pattern. So things like that. Think about it, because this is developing. And it also affects our relationship. So next one is capable. All right, make sure it popped up. So capable is something like we look at, like, yeah, I know I'm capable. I don't even know why this is one of them. But some people don't believe that they're capable. And it comes from connection as well. So, and these they're listed in the book in order. Sometimes I bounce around in therapeutic setting about them, depending on what someone's dealing with. But with capable, I absolutely love this one. What happens in capable is I'm moving along the road from dependence, because again, this is from infancy into adolescence. So I'm going from being totally dependent on someone. If you're an infant, literally can't do anything. I mean, you can't even lift your head. You're born. I can cry. It's really what you can do, right? So what happens when adults don't learn from infancy to adolescence about being capable? Because I'm going from dependence to interdependence. In African American spaces, we have a bad habit of breaking a circle. Like, if I don't like you anymore, I'm done with you. And so now I'm going to be independent. But we are communal people. So let's come back to that. We're communal. That means we operate well in community style stuff. So in times like these, it's really important to know, what does Thanksgiving really look like? I've literally had to give out suggestions. I think I did a live the other night with suggestions like, hey, if you're going to meet, please have your PPE, like have your mask, be prepared. Remember who your elders are and who your young people are in the circle. Remember that in this space. Be resourceful and responsible and resilient in this time. If you know your family is over 10 people and y'all can't resist getting together, really think about how you're going to separate that space so that you are sitting in distance and you're not going to put anybody in a space where even if you haven't gotten tested, you don't want to put people in harm's way. The other things I suggested, which I watched all year and I think they're very neat, is people have been doing Zoom events. So Zoom birthday parties. I've watched people do Zoom marriage, literally watched the Zoom marriage. I thought it was amazing. They had their wedding party there only, and then everybody else had to watch it on Zoom. The people who were invited. So it's a private Zoom. You got to go in. I thought that was the neatest thing. And so people are doing things like this so they can stay protected, but they're also staying communal, and they're also sitting in a space of interdependence. What that means is reciprocity. So in interdependence, I'm giving, you're giving, and it is going. The circle is unbroken. This is community, and this is how we function, and this is how we move. So we have to honor that. The other thing I've seen is the social distance funeral, because we've had, again, a lot of death. And so social distance funeral, people are sitting 6 feet apart. And then they're literally having a private space on social media outlets for friends and family who can't come. Like, you guys, that is brilliant. And it's also showing where we're capable. African Americans, Black people, I told y'all for the rest of you, I'm gonna say Black people, we're so capable, it's sickening. Like, I love it. But what happens when we don't learn capability in an appropriate way is that we don't move into a space of independence, self-sufficiency, and interdependence, but we move to a space where we're either too dependent. That means, like, we don't know how to move. Like, we don't learn anything on how in this development, how to take care of ourselves, which affects our relationships as adults, because now I'm going to be a dependent. Then I might move into a codependent space, which means I'm going to take whatever comes because I don't want to lose you. Or we become overly independent, which means I don't want anything to do with anybody. I got it. I got me. You ain't got to do anything for me, whatever. But we are designed to be interdependent, which means I care for you and you care for me. And if that really happens, then wow, that's a beautiful space and a beautiful space to be. But this is what happens if we don't develop the space of capability, and we feel inadequate. Inadequacy leads to the space of codependence. So again, I told y'all this was a really hard one. But codependence. I really want to keep proving to you that I'm capable. So I do a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense. And then when I say don't make sense, it don't make a lick of sense. Like I'm gonna just keep doing the same thing over and over again. But I'm not wanted. Like, so I might be getting pushed away and I don't even recognize it because now I see the inadequacy, but I'm going to keep going over and over and over and doing. I'm going to do too much. And so I don't have a space if I don't develop this properly of feeling like I'm competent. Not I'm smart, but I'm competent. I know how. So I know how to turn on the light switch. But if I'm sitting in a space where I'm feeling inadequate, then I'm probably going to say, well, I don't know how to do that. When I really do know how to do it, I just don't feel like I do. And so I'm either going to try to become controlling or overdo. I'm either going to become very dependent and overdo. And so if I don't, and when we're capable, we have this ability to have self-control and self-discipline. Like if I know how to do it, then I'm going to do it. If I don't know how to do it, I'm not going to do it. And I'm going to be able to resource and rely on and sit in a space of interdependence on someone in community who can help me. But sometimes we don't. And then in the self-control, I'm going to be able to tell myself in a self-disciplined manner, you can either learn how or you can trust someone else. But it doesn't mean that you're inadequate. It just means this isn't your area. So beautiful space to sit in. But if we don't work on this, what happens is that we start to seek power and control. Like I'm going to dominate it. I'm going to run it. I'm not going to be able to hear. I'm not going to be able to cooperate, probably going right back to sit in that space of connection. I'm not going to do any of that because I don't want to assume the responsibility of either end, which is I don't know. And so I need to call someone. Or I do know and I can do it because I'm competent and I am capable of making it happen. This is a space where kids, you will hear them say, I believe I can do it. For adults, this is very important in relationships that we understand capability. And this is where I say a lot. Y'all will hear me say it on the men all the time. We'll say, I cannot do that. That is one of the most important sentences in the world. I can't, period. And so we say it now in community, like I can't. And we make a joke about it. But truthfully, be honest about what you can and cannot do. It isn't saying you're incompetent. It's saying that I'm willing to sit in an interdependent space and sit in community and get it. And I know that I can. This is a self-esteem builder. This is saying, how do I hold myself in regard and how can I make that happen and how beautiful it is. We get a little scared about it because it sounds like I'm putting myself down, but I am not putting myself down. I'm literally telling myself, hey, this is something I can and cannot do. And it also leaves us in spaces where we're able to be productive and we take responsibility. And if that is the case, then guess what that looks like in our relationships as we move forward. Wish I would hear so I could hear grumbles and sounds. I don't know, maybe you're doing that now, but guess what? It's a beautiful space. Again, I love doing this work and I just wanted to bring it to you guys because it's amazing. So the next one is count. And so I like doing this when I have kids, whenever I do count, because I just like to see them count. So this summer I had the opportunity, I thought it was very neat to work with a young little 4-year-old. And I mean, this little guy knew that he mattered. When I say his parents had done such a fantastic job in understanding their own kid. I mean, this little 4-year-old, he could tell me when he couldn't do something, when he could. He would tell me to back down. Like if I was trying to tell him how to do something, he was like, no, I don't need you to do that. I got it. He wouldn't let me do stuff that he knew how to do. And he knew his value. Like he knew if he thought I was going to cheat him from something, he would stop and say, is this the whole thing? I mean, he was 4. And I was like, wow. And I thought about us in adult relationships when we are sitting in spaces of counting. And do we know that we count? And so in counting, or sitting in a space where we count, this is where we make meaningful contributions because we know we matter to the society or the community in which we are part of. So again, in these times, some of us in our brown and Black bodies haven't felt like we're a part of community. So we have withdrawn or we don't feel significant. I mean, it's a shame that I know at least 2 states, they had to create a law regarding our hair. Like, because they had a law that was in place for employers that required that they could tell someone to change their hair. They couldn't have locks. They couldn't have natural hair. They couldn't show who they were. That is, woo, that's big. And so they had to fight for the space to be themselves. Like, wow, what does that look like? That looks scary, right? So what happens in those spaces when you don't feel significant? What happens to you guys when you don't feel significant? You don't feel like your life is meaningful. This is something you learn from infancy to adolescence. And if it's not learned, we get to go back and visit it. Like, I love working with development. Like, going back and looking at David. David hit spots in his life where he did not feel significant at all. And we don't like to talk about Bible characters like this, but David is one that I hit him hard. And this time I knew that I was going to look at that. He didn't feel significant. And in some spaces you saw where David didn't feel significant. Like, literally, for those who read their Bibles, Ziklag is one of my favorite things to read about, because David got there, the whole area is burnt down. Nobody's dead. David had to go within because everybody was like, we're going to kill David. David did not feel significant. He's supposed to be their leader. These thousands of people are following him. And they're like, we're going to kill him because where are our children? Where are our wives? Where are the people that are a part of us? And so David had to sit in a space like, do I matter here? So for those of us who have not developed in this area well, from children to adults, you feel a space of insignificance or you feel hurt. And so what happens is you may try to hurt other people back. This is a way for you trying to connect and you trying to matter. So if I don't feel like I'm important here, you start to act out. And you start to show it. And it looks really like, ugh, because you don't really know how to get rid of that feeling. And so the other part is that you may feel like my negative impact is better than my positive impact. Why? Because I don't matter anyway. And so if you're sitting in that literally can affect the relationships that you sit in and how you see yourself. So tonight, when I was sitting with those who are sitting in supervision with me, I thought it was really neat that we talked about something like this and how we sit in those spaces and we have to change or recraft the thought that we do matter. And as adults, when we're sitting in adult relationships, working with like addicts, I'll use that as an example. Addicts have a really hard time in the beginning of treatment finding where they matter. What does that mean? Because they've lost everything if they're sitting in a space of addiction now seeking help. So they now have to sit in a space of wanting to change. So they pre-contemplate. That means, I really want to change, but I don't know if I want to stop using, so I'm going to choose using today. And then once they go from there, they might come back to contemplation and say, well, what if I did stop using? What would I gain back? Like, would you even see me? Because I have literally rebelled against all of this because I didn't matter. So I was using this substance to help me feel, help me do. And then they move from this space of contemplation. And so now they're motivated and they begin to plan out. They begin to move. And in that, you can start to ask them about their activities, their beliefs, and what's the consequences so far, so that they can have a disruptive or disputing event with themselves and start to work through it. So how do we heal if we don't know if we count? Start checking your belief system. The first thing is, can I count to myself? Do I matter to myself? If that's the case, then we can start to recraft and remold and reshape that. And that can mean the world of difference. I mean, changes lives. Y'all hear Audrey, so she's probably ready to go. And and so we're going to keep going. But if I feel valuable, then I'm probably going to contribute. And so that is super important to know. And so this is a matter of counts. And then the next one is courage. And so if I'm sitting in a space of courage, and y'all hear me talk about courage, I use a lot of Brene Brown. I'm not going to use her tonight though. But courage does mean heart. And if I'm sitting in a space where I have courage, then I'm more than likely not going to necessarily be a risk taker, but I'm going to have enough to believe in my adulthood that going forth and going into behaviors, that is really going to be something big that I can make a difference. And so, and I'm going to be able to be hopeful. I'm going to be able to be resilient. if I make these decisions to do so. I mean, this is going to be a really big thing. So what happens though, if we don't have courage and if we don't learn that, then I'm going to immediately feel defeated. So this comes back to codependency, where I'm going to have these dysfunctional behaviors, and I'm probably going to have dysfunctional conversation with myself. So dysfunctional talk, or that negative talk. A lot of us think that negative talk means telling the truth. Like, I literally had a conversation with someone recently, and her statement was, hey, people try to discourage me from negative talk, but I'm going to do this and do that. And she was kind of going off. And so I said, well, I mean, negative talk and the truth are two different things. So the truth is, I gained weight during COVID. That's the truth. Like, that's not negative talk. That's a whole truth, right? So I can do something with the truth. And if I have courage, then what happens, I can overcome this fear, if that's the case, or I can overcome something or have confidence to know that I can lose the weight. But negative talk sounds like putting yourself down, shaming yourself. And so if you're sitting in that kind of space, then that's when you need to start examining, what is that? Because now I'm feeling defeated and inferior. And so I'm saying things or avoiding getting back into healthy states of mind. And so I'm not being in a space that's resilient. And I don't. So I probably become dependent on something. So like, say for instance, if you're shaming yourself about your body, then in most cases, you're going to do something to either think that you're rectifying, or you're going to do something else to bring some more shame to it, because I'm not sitting in a space that's encouraged or encouraged. And so working through that, the thing is, can I believe that I can handle whatever comes? So in times like this, how are we sitting encouraged from looking at our childhood issues? And so how did David look at the childhood issue? Like, can I handle this? He literally faced the giant as a kid and then became a king. Like, can I handle it? We have to sometimes do some Sankofa work, like go back, and it might require you to look at some traumatic experience. Like, I went to Charleston, South Carolina this week on purpose this weekend, because that is one place that I think is one of the most resilient places in the United States of America. It's Charleston, South Carolina. It's a place that literally went through a lot. I mean, slavery, like, you can still see where they had the slave auctions. You can go to the Slave House Museum. You can still see, you can feel it. I mean, for those of you who are empathic, you can feel it, like the weight of it. You go, I mean, you just take in the air. But the beauty of Charleston is the Gullah people, the Geechee language, and how they literally didn't dismiss it. They didn't. It literally sets up way of courage to even write in Gullah. Like, they have a New Testament written in Gullah. Like, I was almost tempted to buy it. But I have I had another purchase, because my grandmother, when we were growing up, and even when we became adults, she would not say Santa Claus for anything. And we was like, oh my God. So we just thought it's because we were country. I mean, like, we are from Cartersville, Georgia. We know we country. And so she would always say, y'all need to go to bed so Santa Claus can come. And I'm like, who the heck is Santa Claus? It's Santa Claus. And then come to find out, I saw a book, and the book was Old Sandy Claus. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. So I bought this book, and I immediately text my cousins. And I said, for all this time that we picked at her, like, this is a real thing. And it's Gullah. So I was like, it made me want to research, like, do we have people from South Carolina? That my grandmother said that the whole time. And I wanted to know, how far did it go back that they said Sandy Claus? Because she wasn't wrong. Like, this is literally a whole book dedicated to Sandy Claus. And I was like, oh my God, and it's Gullah. So like, what is that? That's amazing. And she had the courage to keep speaking what she knew. Like, we would laugh at her, and my grandmother would be like, I don't care. Like, I'm going to call it what I call it. And she went forth with that. And so what space, sitting in resilience like that, that's wow. So how do we do that now? How do we have courage? How do we have resilience even in these adult relationships? Like, so really hadn't tapped the romantic relationship into this one. How do you have courage to sit in or get out of when you feel inferior or defeated? Like, do you find yourself looking for marriage counseling or talking with your pastors or talking with healthy couples that are like, and I literally encourage all of my couples to get like mentor couples. Those who have, in my definition, if you have 10 or more under your belt, and you know that they're healthy, vet your couple, but find them like, and you can go sit with them, and they're not going to spread your business or talk about your problem, but they're going to sit there and help you through it. And so even when I was married, kind of had like a mentor couple. They've been married like 25 years, and they talked about it, and they would say, there is no back door. Like, you're either gonna work through it or walk out the front door. And so I didn't understand that until, but when I did, I was like, oh, because you find the courage. Like, if you're sitting in the space of feeling defeated, literally it's resculpting and finding a way of finding that confidence and finding that space of happiness. And happiness doesn't necessarily mean that you stay in a relationship, especially if it's abusive and it's codependent to the point where it's leading you to an abusive state of mind that you feel like you have to stay there. That's something to be checked. And what I found in doing clinical practice is that most people who are in that, I literally invite them to come back to like childhood space. Did you learn how to connect? Do you realize that you are capable? Like, you're not incompetent, and what you see is what it is. And you don't have to try to make up something else. Or, do you realize that you count in this relationship? If you don't realize that you count, then that's something we need to talk about. Do you matter here? Especially for my people who have experienced infidelity. Do you matter here? Like, what is leading to the infidelity? And do you want to make this work? And do you have enough courage to talk about it? Call it out, and be hopeful for whatever change may be. I can handle whatever may come. And so there are things to end this where we don't know how to manage this stuff. And so I've hinted on those throughout, and they are called goals of misbehavior. So when we work with kids, they literally have a goal of misbehavior. So there's a meme, like, I don't think it's a meme, I think it's a video floating around social media where this mother is like literally getting beat up by her kid, and like she pops him back, and then the kid like keeps coming. And so the question is, and as social workers, like, what would you do in this case? How would you manage this family? And so I literally told somebody, let's look at the goals of misbehaving and figure it out. Because in misbehaving, we sometimes come to wrong conclusions. A lot of assumptions when we talk about misbehaving they're just wrong. And so one, essential skills have to be built in order to understand, one, these protections, and two, what is the misbehavior? So the essential skills, communication. Y'all hear me say that all the time. Oh my God. Like, please communicate. Be honest, open, and transparent. If you can teach that to your kids, I promise you as adults, you won't have a problem with them being honest, open, and transparent with you. Self-discipline. Like, this is a place, again, start with your kids. You've heard all of these tonight. So then assume responsibility. Like, assume it. Like, no, take responsibility. So that's being fair. Do not take responsibility for something you have not done or that you're not willing to do. Do not become surety for someone. Just take responsibility for what you can do. Like, if it wasn't your idea, say it wasn't your idea. No lie. Just say, I didn't think of that. Somebody else did. And then celebrate it with them if the idea is good. Celebrate it with them. And then learn how to make wise decisions. Wise decisions literally come from a place of how emotional am I and how rational am I? How logical is it? And then I can merge those two so I can sit in the space of my humanity and good, wise mind. Make a wise decision. So like, I can literally see where it's taking me. So say I put me out there. I made a phone call recently. That was a terrible idea. It was the worst thing I've done in 2020. I'm not lying. Like, worse. It was almost equal up there with COVID, the call I made. It's just terrible. Knew I should have stayed away from this phone call, but I made it anyway. Because I thought, you know what? I'm strong enough. I got me. Bad decision. So what happened for me to come back to wise state of mind and start making wise decisions, I had to sit in those emotions. Like, I had to be angry. I had to be frustrated. I had to cry. I had to be honest. I had to be honest with myself and say, Margaret, being fair, you knew you shouldn't have made that call. You were very aware that this was a bad phone call. Bad, bad, bad. And then I had to come back and be logical. Yes, I'm an adult. Yes, I know how to do stuff. On the other hand, this is something that I was not capable of doing. It did not make me incompetent. I just knew this was a space I wasn't capable. So I should have probably called someone else. because I wasn't capable to manage in the situation. And then once I did that, my wise state or my wise decision making mechanism turned back on. And it was like, I can talk to people, just not that particular group of people, because I'm not capable of maintaining my emotional wellness with that group of people. And that is okay. Guess what that's called? Setting boundaries. So hopefully we can do that. But sometimes as children, we didn't really learn that. We learned survival skills, but we didn't learn protection. And so that is okay. Again, this is a series. So if y'all have questions, DM me, let me know, and we can work through them. So sitting in that, there are goals of misbehaving. And what comes from that is we misbehave because of wrong conclusions. Like, just gonna make an assumption, and I made the assumption is wrong, then we move on. And so the first one, we have to look at it. So if we are connected, then we really are not seeking or doing attention-seeking behaviors. If we're not well connected, then we're gonna do something that's attention-seeking. It's gonna be unhealthy. So how many of you guys know attention-seeking people? Like, this is what I'm gonna turn this into for real on the men. I had to lay my ground, and then we're gonna get out of here. Listen, pay attention to if they seeking attention. Like, do you want to be around that? Do you have the patience to be around that? And ask yourself, are you seeking attention? Like, are you doing random stuff that you know is gonna cause somebody to think? If that's the case, ask yourself, do you even need to be connected to that place? That place might be unhealthy. It might be wrong. It might be unnecessary. It might cost a life if you keep going to it. Going back to David. David knew he probably should not have summoned Bathsheba. Pause right there, because I know some of y'all are arguing me on it. But at the end of the day, what happened? They lost a child, right? So listen, pay attention. Are you connecting well? Like, is this a space of community that's good for you? Or is this attention seeking because I don't know how to connect well? If it's attention seeking, check it. If you know somebody that's sitting in spaces of attention seeking, check it. Like, you want to make sure you build good boundaries, because what happens if I had a childhood issue, like if I'm an abused kid that is told not to tell anybody that I'm getting abused, you better keep this in the house, then guess what I'm going to do probably as an adult if I don't correct that, if I don't go back and look at how to connect, then I'm probably going to start keeping a lot of stuff in, but I'm going to start doing attention seeking. Like, see me over here, like something's going on. I'm not going to be able to verbalize it properly. I'm not going to be able to do it. So what happens when I don't? I'm going to do stuff that's random. I'm going to do risky behaviors. You're going to see me today. Like, I'm going to do stuff. I'm going to cuss you out for no reason. Check all of that that's going on. Check it. Make sure that you're good. The next one is capable versus power. Have you ever watched somebody that's like literally power hungry? Like, best example I had tonight is not David. It's going to be, have anybody watched Power? I know we cut 50 Cent off. I think he got canceled. There's a list of people that got canceled during the election. I'm just putting it out there. So, but if you watch Power, I ain't talking about like little kid one, because I hadn't watched Power the after Ghost is dead. But Power, like, oh my God. Like, first of all, I hate using it, but I want to talk about Tasha. Like, Tasha was so capable. Tasha was like the mastermind behind a lot of stuff. But Tasha started doing stuff to like gain access to power at the end. It was very unhealthy. She became very controlling. She started doing stuff like people got shot. Like, her best friend died. Like, her doing craziness because I'm gonna do this by myself versus knowing how to connect. Like, I'm not saying the drug dealing is right if you watch Power. What I am saying is that here's this capable, and she started to feel incompetent because of his abusive moment. He was cheating on her, how he talked to her, how he didn't acknowledge her. And so it led her down. But we started to find out about Tasha's childhood. Her mom talked to her like that too. Pay attention if you start watching from season 1 to the last one. Her mom would be like, you better stay with him because so I'm not capable of having a healthy relationship. I got to stay with him. And you know what we're doing? Like, pay attention to your relationships. People, we are all capable of having healthy relationships. It might take a little bit of work, but we all have to have healthy, we have a right to them anyway, healthy relationships. And that means you have to continue to build boundaries. And so if you feel like you are like mismanaging the power of yourself by trying to control everything and gain power from others, then check to see if you're feeling inferior in the space. I tell people who work with me, my cousin got on to me today because she said, you know, sometimes you have to give a direct directive. Yeah, I was like, okay, I missed that. But people who work for me, they know like you got to be capable. And if you do private practice, Like, if you know that you are the counselor, and this person is trusting you to talk to them and use capable methods, you will not come to MLC Consultant coming here saying that you don't understand how to take a theory, find a treatment modality, and help your client. What I don't want to hear you say is, I told him we're going to find a happy place. Somebody please tell me where that is in some theoretical book, because Clark Atlanta trained me well. On the other hand, my clinicians also know that we have to show empathy, and we also have to show levels of care and be present. And so we have to be attuned. And I'm inviting you guys tonight to sit in spaces of attunement. Like, how attuned am I so that I don't try to usurp power, but I understand my capabilities. And I understand that if I sit in a space of interdependence and I sit in a space where I'm connected, then my capable is going to shine no matter what. And I don't have to fight for it. And so, that's how we can sit. So we don't have to misbehave in that space of overpowering or trying to take power or trying to debo a situation. So I said, we understand. All right. And then count versus revenge. All right. So where are my revenge people at? If you are watching this, just type #revenge. Like, I'm going to get revenge on you. I've heard people be like, you know what? It's consequences and repercussions. Like, you don't come for me. But see, if you count in that environment, you won't have to get revenge. And I know some people sitting there like, revenge is mine, saith the Lord. That's fine. But no. That's not the case. You need to pay attention to what is revengeful. Like, do you matter in that area? Do you count? Do you count? Thank you, Lynette. And so do you matter and do you count? So if that's the case, and you don't count, for the people who have come through my office, I'll tell you in a minute, do you belong in that space? Because if I sit in the space where I belong, then I need to question on, why am I trying to stay around? Why am I trying to be there? Once I accept the fact that this is a place I probably don't need to be, I won't try to force myself there where I got to sit and fight, which means I'm probably going to do something revengeful because you're going to see me. Like, that's unnecessary. You don't have to do it. Doesn't even matter. Doesn't even count. You don't have to sit in that space. So counting. Do I show up? I'm telling y'all, the 4-year-old is something shot. He showed me what count looks like. I tried to do something for him and I thought he was going to smack my hand. I could tell his mama smack his hand because I went to reach and do something. Because I'm thinking in my mind, he's 4. He's not going to understand that. Absolutely capable. Absolutely connected to his family. When I say counted, he was like, no, I know how to do that. No, don't do that. I got it. Thank you, Miss Margaret. And I'm like, what? He knew that was his space. I was in his space because I was doing something at his house. And he was like, I got that. I got it. He knew how much he counted. And he did it so well. His mom even was like, thank you for doing that for her. I was like, this is weird. But he knew what his space was. So, and did I have a touch of revenge? I ain't gonna lie, because I want to be like, man, I'm grown, but the 4-year-old actually, he had the right to do what he did. So, but how many of you guys are sitting in that revenge space? If you feel like you got to be revengeful towards someone, should you have been in that space in the first place? Did you even count there? And can you go back and see how that can be made healthy? Or is it something that needs to be amended? That means probably needs to be cut. Can you do it? The last one, and I'm gonna let y'all go because y'all know I give y'all an hour. Because I Pastor Zayas be talking about he give 15 minutes, but I'll give y'all an hour and then I got to go home. I'm gonna go get me some chicken wings. And so courage versus avoidance. You guys, this is the last one, and it's the most important one of the night. And then I'm gonna tell y'all what next the next on the men is gonna look like. But some of you guys are sitting in spaces of being connected, and you connected well. But somehow you don't feel like you count and that you're not capable. And so I don't have courage to walk through. Go back and see how that looks. I am connected. I'm connected with this space, this entity. I'm connected in this relationship. I am connected because I'm capable. I'm capable of. And put what you add, the value that you bring to the space. Bring it. You don't have to do attention seeking. For my clinicians, the value that they bring is that they help their clients and their clients keep showing back up. Why? Because they know they're capable and then they count in their room. What I teach my clinicians is that you need to manage your own therapeutic room. You manage the space, not your client. Manage the space, let your client have what they need in the space, but have necessary what's there, which means you're attuned to the room, you're attuned to yourself, you're attuned to your client. If that's the case, then guess what? You count in the room. Matter of fact, your client is the most important. And then guess who else is the most important? Both of you are important in the room. So that's what I tell them. If you're sitting in a space with someone where you need to count, say it like, I matter here. This is why I'm here. If it's your job, if it's your relationship, I'm here because I want to be. Like, I matter here. And then come down to courage so that you don't have to avoid. Courage is having heart to get it done. Courage is willing to take a risk, a healthy risk. Courage is willing to sit in a space where you might get a no, but the no is going to come with an understanding of, I still matter. I know I'm competent and I'm still connected. Courage is not avoidance. If you start to avoid, pay attention to why you're in the space and why you're in the relationship, and check that childhood issue that may pop up. What is the point? What's the belief that you have about yourself? And what's the consequence to showing up? So it won't be a wrong conclusion. You can start understanding, why am I misbehaving, or why am I acting like this in this place? And so, guys, this is going to be a continuation. So y'all catch me next week. And I want you to, if y'all have any questions, please go visit my website and see us there. That website will be changing in December. So it's my fault that there's a glitch in the website. So if my web designer ever catches this, I'll tell them myself. I took responsibility. You see that? So it'll be up in December. But for now, please go to mlcconsultingllc.com. We would love to hear from you. Leave comments, let us know if this is helping you. And I'm very excited. She confirmed with me this week that I will be able to have Carmen Jimenez Pride on the men. Y'all, she is my friend. She's like my sister, but she is a world-renowned play therapist. And so I'm excited that she's actually going to be on the men. So I get excited when I have like big names on the men. So she's going to come and we're going to walk through what adult issues and adult relationships look like when we have childhood issues that are unresolved. Because sometimes we can't. We sit in spaces where we do seek attention and we do overpower something because you're not going to debo me, because we're recalling. And that recall is bad because it's like, I remember when I thought I was capable, but I didn't feel capable because somebody made me not feel capable. So I didn't get this right. So now I'm going to have an exertion of power that's overwhelming, even for me. And we're going to talk about what it looks like in adulthood to sit in that revenge space, like the ugly, like, I'm going to come for you because I don't really feel like I matter here, which is something that we didn't learn. And then what does it look like when I'm being avoidant, when I'm avoiding stuff, and how this affects us in our adulthood with codependency in our relationships. So it is our responsibility in life to connect, because we are hardwired for connection, you guys. It is not our responsibility to take on abuse. It is not our responsibility to take on an inferiority space that is pressed upon us as Black people, our BIPOC people. I mean, that's given to us all of the time, Black and Indigenous, like all of the time. But we're not inferior. We're not 3/5 of anything. We're not built for reservation. Like, we're not that. We're humans. And so we do matter and we do count, and not in just particular spaces. But I want to tell y'all something that, listen, this was a space in Georgia that counted, and nobody in the world would have ever thought that these 3 spaces I'm about to name, if you're from Georgia and you from the metro Atlanta area, counted for the 2020 election. Clayton County, nobody thought they were going to count it. And then there are 2 particular roads in DeKalb County where the majority of these people sat and had a large number of votes. Grisham Road, I'm sorry, I just never thought in my life Grisham Road would have been like, we waiting on the Grisham Road count. And Candler Road. Like, these 2 roads are right next to each other, and who would have thought in their mind that that was going to be what the count was waiting on to help Georgia flip over to blue. So what does that look like in that space? And then what if we had avoided in our adulthood what this election looked like? We would not have changed the view and the seat of America. I mean, the world has congratulated us on what we've done. And so that's it. And you congratulate yourself on whatever you have done that you had courage to do. So I will see you guys next week on the men. We will be on time. Carmen is very timely, and I'm very excited. Y'all will see the flyer go out with her face on it. I got to get her stuff. I'm so excited, and I will see you guys next time. So thank you guys for supporting MLC Consulting. Thank you for supporting Healthy and Holy Concepts, and thank you for supporting On the Men. And if you don't do anything else this week, I need you to stay on the men. You guys have a great night. Love you, and I'll see you next week.